Packing a rucksack for backpacking means packing it so that it's comfortable and stable. This means what's most important is where the weight goes in the rucksack. You don't want all the weight at the bottom, because that will pull you backwards and feel uncomfortable. You only want all the weight at the top if you're on a very good level trail, because that tends to make the pack unstable. So the weight, the bulkiest items can go at the bottom, the heaviest items, the real weight, should really be in the middle of the pack, but also close to your back. If you have all the weight, say you put lots of heavy things in this outside pocket on the back, that will also be uncomfortable. It will pull you over backwards. And the other thing to remember is very few rucksacks are waterproof. The fabric may be coated, but the seams aren't sealed. So anything water sensitive needs to be in a waterproof bag. You can use a pack cover. I prefer to use an internal waterproof liner, and with things that are very water sensitive I put them in another waterproof bag as well. Now, an insulating mat like this, which will fold flat, can go down the back of the pack. If you have a foam pad, the traditional type, it'll probably need to be strapped on the outside. The advantage of putting this down the back of the pack at the back is it also adds extra padding. And I usually put it outside the waterproof liner because it doesn't matter if it gets very wet. The sleeping bag in a waterproof stuff sack can go at the bottom because it's fairly bulky for the weight and it's soft, so you don't have hard objects at the bottom, which enables the pack to wrap more easily round the hips. Spare clothing, which in this case is some socks and an insulated jacket, which I'm not going to need during the day, so that can also go in near the bottom. If you carry, which I sometimes do, an emergency bivvy bag, again you don't need that during the day. I carry these for side trips away from camp when I don't have the tent with me, so that can go in there. Cooking gear, this has a stove and a pan and spoons and so on. Some people like to brew up during the day, in which case you need to keep this near the top of the pack. I don't, so I pack this in the middle because it's relatively heavy for the bulk. And also my camp food. This is enough for an overnight camp, breakfast, dinner, drinks materials, soup and so on. Again, I won't need that during the day, so that can go in the pack. Now, the stove and this I've packed at the back of the pack because they're quite heavy, not at the front, so I've got a space in front of them. Now I use that space for a light fleece jacket because there's not much weight there, but it can take up a bit of room and hold those other items against my back. It's possible I'll need the fleece jacket during the day, but unlikely. On top of the fleece jacket I put waterproof trousers, which I hope I don't need during the day, but I want them relatively near the top just in case. If I'm using a tent rather than a tarp or a tarp tent, then the tent poles and pegs can go down the side of the pack next to my back because they're quite long, so I push those down there. I can get them out easily, they're not in the way of anything else. And the same with, I carry a collapsible water bag, again for camp use, which means I don't have to camp right next to a stream. I can carry water to the tent. That is very light, so I put it down the front of the pack, outside of the waterproof liner. We're now near the top of the pack. Waterproof jacket can go in. Again, you hope you don't need that, but if you do, you don't want it at the bottom of the pack where you've got to unpack everything else in the rain that's just started. And I have, this is an oddities bag. This contains all sorts of different odds and ends. It's got a toothbrush and toothpaste, it's got sunscreen, it's got a Swiss Army knife, it's got a small headlamp, it's got a small repair kit. They're all things I probably won't need during the day. They're relatively heavy, so it goes near the top towards my back. Then comes the tent, and depending how the tent goes down in size, exactly how you pack it, you can separate the inner and the outer tent to make 2 bags. I prefer not to because it's more difficult when you put the tent up. This goes at the top of the pack so that it's easily accessible. If I get to the campsite and it's raining, I can get the tent out and put it up without having to pack other items. And also near the top at this time of year are midge coils, just in case when I get to camp it's really midgy and I want to get one lit as soon as possible. But that can go at the front because it's not actually very heavy. We then got various small items here. Now, this is fuel for the stove, which in this case is meths. It probably won't leak, but because meths stinks and stains, if it does leak, I don't want it inside the pack. So I put this in an elasticated pocket, which most packs have down here. If I was using a gas stove, I would pack the canister inside the pack next to the stove. But as I've got a meth stove today, it goes there. I also have a small water bottle for use during the day, so I want that to be accessible, so that can also go in here. Then there's quite a large front pocket here, but as I said, you don't want heavy things in this because it will pull the pack away from you, but it is useful for items you'll want during the day or might want. I keep the first aid kit here, which obviously I hope not to use, but it means if I need it, it's easily accessible. I keep a buff just in case it's chilly, or if it's very hot I can use it as a sweatband as well. So that can go in here. In case it's bright and sunny, I have dark glasses. And also, in case it's very dark and I can't see the map properly, I have reading glasses as well. And toilet paper with some hand sanitizer can go in there. And there's also a plastic toilet trowel which can go down the side of the pocket there. Snacks for during the day, various fruit bars and flapjack. The map can either go in that pocket, or, as this happens to be a waterproof map, I don't have to worry about it getting wet, it can go in a side pocket. And finally, if I'm not wearing this hat against the sun, and sometimes against the rain, this can go in the front pocket as well. So all these items in the front pocket are ones that I might need during the day, but they're all lightweight. Once everything's in, the pack can then be closed up at the top. Now this pack doesn't have a lid, it does have a strap over the top, but whether it's a lid or a strap, you want to make sure it's secure and not loose, because if it's loose, all the stuff at the top is going to move about when you walk. So with a lid you would tighten up the straps down here. With this, you yank this tight, press down on it, and then that's quite secure. It isn't going to wobble. At the same time, if, which many packs have, you have side tension straps like this, again, pulling those in pulls the load in. If these are loose like this, then the load inside can move about, which is less comfortable to carry. So once everything's tight, you've got everything the way you want it. You see that it's quite compact, and when I move it, things are not moving about. The load isn't shifting. So once the pack is packed and all the straps are secure, it's time to put it on, which with a reasonably light load like this is easy enough to do. And once it's on your back, you can do up the hip belt. Now the padded sections of the hip belt should ride just above your hip bone here, so that the weight is sitting nicely on the hips. You can tighten the belt up so that the weight is secure there. The shoulder straps, it depends on the terrain. If it's rough terrain, if you're scrambling, if it's a steep path, you maybe want maximum stability, tighten them up and the pack will hug your back. It'll move, there's no extra movement at all, it's not going to throw you off balance. But the penalty for that is some of the weight's now on my shoulders, and because it's so body hugging, it gets sweaty. So on easier terrain, where stability is not a major factor, can loosen off the shoulder straps, which immediately drops the weight onto the hips and leaves a gap here, which means there's a bit of airflow, your back doesn't get as sweaty, but you can see the pack is not as stable and can move off the shoulders. Well, now that I've got everything packed, the pack's on and I'm ready, I can at last move off and get away from the noise of all these cars and this road.